Lady Danbury's story was literally probably my absolute favorite because, and I now knew who Pay Band is because I saw you post about her and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't really know which one she is. And then like the dynamic between Coral and Lady Danbury. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I love that this show really, I'm starting to understand what Shonda was talking about in terms of like female friendship and like their core friendship. I loved.
I mean, yeah, I like Pavan and she's the most generous and kind human being I have probably ever met. I've never met anyone like her. She is so creative and I was just pretty much inspired by her because a lot of her background is in theater.
Okay.
And so that meant that like we kind of worked in the same way, which is like we just create like extremely over the top detailed back stories for the two of us so that we like have like something to like kind of like, I don't know, keep like an authenticity about their relationship because it is something different. There is the fact that like I'm a Black woman and this is not a Black woman serving me. So how did that come to be? How does she feel about that? Where did we meet? And like, what are the actual like power dynamics? And so we were able to really delve into just, like this storyline of us meeting as like really young girls and like being friends.
Yeah.
And like our fathers like probably like made a deal so that, she could come to the UK with me and like be like my right hand. And so it was really, really fun to do that. And then to have essentially somebody who I could also bounce off of when like Lady Danbury is going through her stuff with the Queen. Because there are so many moments where Agatha's alone,
That right there, I was just like, to me, I was like, oh, now I'm sorry if I say it, is your name Arsèma or Arsema?
Arsema.
Arsema. Okay. So I was like, Arsema, I was like, she had to be so lonely on set, like, because you weren't with the like core crew all the time.
Yeah, it was initially I like felt it because also Pavan wasn't there as much as I would love her to be.
Yeah.
But I made it's like the greatest group of friends on the crew. Like there's some I have to shout them out because they really held me down. A really good group of Black women who I'm just like excited to finally release like all of the photos that we've been taking BTS because like they can finally have they really held me down. People in hair and makeup who now do my hair and makeup when I'm in London. First ADs, interns, like people who are on props and locations, all these people ended up being like some of like the closest people that I've ever been able to work with. So yeah, that like kind of compensated for the fact that a lot of my storyline is like solo dolo.
I was like, good, because I kept watching. I was like, are we gonna have any more like? And you truly like held your own, like Lady Danbury does. And I was just like, the strength and the power, not just like as the character, but like as an actress. I could see it on screen. I just loved it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it just because just seeing it happen and like for me personally, like just watching it, I don't know. I was just like, can we get her can her and the like Adolphus have like a little more heat? Because I don't know. Personally, I was just like, these old men.
Oh, it's a sign of the times. It was a lot like that. And I think, sometimes maybe it's like her taste. I think she's also just like wiser than her years. So like the young man is not really gonna do it for her. And I think when she realizes that like her demographic is taken, then she's like, you know what, I'd rather like I love her because she's like, why get tied down in like a relationship when I don't need my pleasure to be out of a marriage? Like it can just be from what I seek for myself. And I love that because that's so freeing to play also as an actor.
Yeah, it's especially like the line that sticks out in my mind is like when you talk to the Queen and you're like, why are you, I can't remember the line exactly, but it's like, why are you so, your duty is to your country, not to be over some man.
Yeah,
And
you're
then
not some simpering little
you're
girl.
simpering, yeah, like you should not be simpering over this man. Do you not see us? And I was like, oh, that line right there, because I don't know if it's in the industry or just sometimes in life in general, like when you and India were talking about, when you get to see other people, like women of color, Black women, when you guys see each other in these spaces, it's like, it's so empowering.
It truly is, but at the same time, and I think that's what that whole, like the kind of weird dynamic at times between Charlotte and Agatha is there's also that weird moment where you do see each other and you're like, I hope we're on the same side.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more like heartbreaking than to like connect with a Black woman and realize that, oh, she's not connecting with you in that way, or like even anyone of your same ethnicity, because like we tend to be the minorities, and so it's rare, and to have that connection does mean a lot. So yeah, it was layered.
There's so many layers in this show. Like that's what I like. It's so different. It's in the same world, but it's a completely different world at the same time as Bridgerton, is like what I noticed, because in this show in particular, we're able to unpack so much. And like was that something that y'all realized was happening when you got the script?
Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna be honest. When I first watched Bridgerton, I was like, when I got to the end, I was like, wait, this is all about him not wanting to ejaculate in her. I'm like, I can't believe I just got so invested over just this. I was like, oh my God. I was like, what have I signed up for? What is this going to be about? I mean, I love Lady Danbury. So I was like, I know whatever she's going to be doing in the show, I'm going to be all here for.
Yeah.
And then reading the first episode, I was like, oh, so this is how we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I remember I'm like, this is Shonda writing this. This is like stuff that is outside of the entire like books. And so she kind of had a lot of place to play, I assume. And so there was something really, I don't know, when you do something that is kind of scary, it's like exciting.
Yeah.
You know, like reading some of the scenes, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be on camera. Like this is going to be on Netflix. I was like, oh my, like even just the scene with like the queen wiping, like that whole thing. I was just like, this is the most electrifying thing that you could watch. Something that really just makes you just like hits you right here in the chest. And so, yeah, I definitely like clocked it the moment, the moment we got the episodes. And as you keep reading and watching, it just becomes like more real that like this is more, you know, when your parents tell you the stories of like their lives and it's always like, I had to walk 40 miles to school, and you know, it is always like a much more darker version of your reality because they did have to do so much so that you didn't have to go through that. And I think that's exactly what Queen Charlotte is to Bridgerton. It's like, this is really beautiful, and now you get to see why, because a lot of people worked really hard and were borderline traumatized.
No, for sure.
You know, just so that we could have this beautiful universe where it is all about, you know, the diamond of the season and love and balls and embroidery. You know, you have to get through the dirt to get to that, you know.
The work was definitely put in so that we could exist in the Bridgerton fantasy, essentially. Like that's what I think I loved about it, because like we got like one line in Bridgerton season 1, and then it was almost like we're not really going to address it in season 2. There was a lot of things that was like not addressed in season 2 that were like introduced in season 1. And so I love how Queen Charlotte is now kind of, I feel like it went more back to its roots in a way. Like we went back to like a season 1 where, okay, so LGBTQ plus relationships could happen. We have, you know, mixed couples, we have this integration happening. Like it kind of was like that groundbreaking Bridgerton again, where season 2 was almost like we're in fantasy world, like in a way.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Yeah. So like that's what I love so much about Queen Charlotte, is because, you know, this stuff is happening today. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to your page, is because you do get to show like the brightness and the amazingness of being a part of the show, but you're also very real about what's going on in today's society. Like, how do you balance the two, like as a person, and like keep yourself sane?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think it's not even about like, I used to think about it as balancing, but I think
Okay.
I've now thought of it as like the two are just the same. Like, I think as a active member of like this community that we are all a part of, I have to care. And
Mhm.
I just now have been able to find a way to do that through my acting.
Yeah.
So it means that I get to work on projects like this or things that really do align with the way that I think politically, because I recognized, like, there was a while where I was like, I know that there's something wrong happening in the world. And now that I know that, I can't unknow it. And,
Yes.
you know, like having studied public health, like just seeing on a health level, just the amount of inequality, it's kind of almost, it shocks the system. And I realized that there's no way that I could do it through policy the way that I want to, because it's all about like diplomacy and how you have to be nice and chat like all of this stuff. And it's a boys club and whatever. And I couldn't care less. And, and then I realized that like media is actually one of the most powerful ways to really engage with people. Like
Mhm.
people's minds tend to be changed a bit more when they feel empathy towards a character. And how special is it when that character doesn't look like them?
Yeah.
So then I realized, I was like, okay, I am able and privileged enough that I get to choose projects. And now I'm able to make projects,
Yeah.
which means that I then can beautifully marriage like everything that I preach and actually like apply it and show it to everyone. Because the thing is, like, knowledge, it serves me nothing. I know it now. What am I going to do with it? But like sharing it is where the value comes in. Like it
Absolutely.
does, like what it gives me nothing to be selfish about it. And so I think a lot of the things that I post are also just like, if, I mean, like you should care about it all. Like, why not? Like, does it disturb you so much? And if so, sort that out. But I'm like,
Yeah.
there's just so much that we don't know. And I think people should be asking more questions. And that's why I love this show, because it does that. It's like, what if this happened? You know?
Yeah. No, I love that so much, because like it, so I like when I first started like doing like social, like not really doing so, like, I feel like we've been doing social media our entire life.
Mm.
But like when I would start doing more, I did a lot of activist work. I have like a whole like blog page dedicated to Pacifica issues and stuff. And so
Amazing.
like I have that, and then I have Bridgerton, and I'm always just like, oh, like, oh, what's happening in this world? But you're so right. Like, why not? And if it disturbs somebody, they need to figure out why it's disturbing them, instead of, how can I help? Like, why is the reaction not how can I help? Why is it this is ridiculous, And so I love that. And you spoke about having projects of your own, which I am so excited to see someday, because I just know that you have so much creativity in you. And I'm like, okay, so what projects are you like creating, or what would you like to see? Like, is there a story out there that you're like, I need to tell that story?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. So the greatest part I think about having so much time for myself on set was I was reading like no one's business.
Yes.
It's it's crazy. I actually have like, gosh, come May 4th, everyone's gonna get photos because I
Release
created
them
like,
all.
I tell you, I'm releasing like it's going to be a massive dump. But like I was able to like almost just by cosmic coincidence like match every book I was reading to like a gown and like a wig I was wearing. Um, but there's like so many that I'm not a good. I can't. I know where my strengths are. I don't think I'm a great writer, and I leave that to people who write. You know, I think we should all stick to the rivers and the lakes that we're used to.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think I would love to like make a lot of the things that I have been reading, specifically a lot of stuff that is just different. Like there's a book called Unfinished Business by Leye Adekunle, I think. And it's like one of those like cheesy thrillers that we used to like in like 2010, you know, where somebody stumbles upon something and it's like, oh gosh, now I have to solve this entire crime. But it's like in Nigeria, it's about a Nigerian woman lawyer who runs this like nonprofit for sex workers and like women who are vulnerable women. And she just like constantly gets like tied into random things because people abuse women constantly. And so, but it's just such a good like little, I don't know, vignette of like Nigerian like high life. And I think it would be so beautiful to see that on screen with like proper funding. There's a bunch of really good like sci-fi fantasy books that I've been reading. Unbroken is one that is amazing. What else? Vagabonds is an amazing book. That might be one of the best books that I have read in like a couple of years. And yeah, I think there's a lot of also like stories of people that I think are forgotten, like women in history that I would love to see. Just, I don't know, an interesting way of telling their story and what they stood for. Like, yeah, and it would be, just there's a bunch of stuff out there. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
No, I totally get that. I have the same where I'm like, that there's this person from like the one thing that I've always wanted to like tell the story of is like, you know, in history class where we always like talk about World War II or World War I, and like every freaking award season, like the British are always getting awards for some World War II movie where it's all about white men and their battles. And I'm like, but there were men of color, there were women of color that their stories are forgotten. I'm just like, we could have so many other stories from this war that's not just from a white man's perspective, you know? And yeah, I would love to see more people. So like, I know like you are going to be bringing so many wonderful new stories because I'm tired of seeing that there's a Twilight remake, a Harry Potter remake. Oh girl, yeah.
No, not a Twilight. I mean, I already spit out my drink when I saw there was a Harry Potter remake.
Same.
I think it's just it's too soon.
We were kids. Like they were like we're not even old yet. And they like
more money into the estate of J.K. Rowling is a very interesting choice.
That's why Emma Watson didn't sign on. I don't think she signed on for the project because she knew it would go to J.K. Rowling.
You see, it's interesting. I saw a tweet about it, which was like, it really, it made me a bit, I don't know, scared, which was the fact that they're probably going to cast a Black Hermione.
I think they are, yeah.
And they're going to use that as like, I mean, she's going to get the fallout really, because this is still a life-changing job for any actor. Right. And for it to be like them using essentially a Black actress as like kind of their, I don't know, Trojan horse or scapegoat. Like
it's just a trophy. It like they literally are gonna say like, we have like, look what we're doing, look at us, aren't we doing so good? Like, because that's what Disney is doing with Lilo and Stitch. Like
yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know like how you feel about that, even though you're not Hawaiian, but as like somebody from like the Pacific Islands.
Oh, so my friends and I, so like the night I arrived in LA, I actually had a Zoom call with a filmmaker in New Zealand. Like, well, tell me what I need to do. I've got 70,000 followers on TikTok. I've got a blog page, like, you know, getting stuff done. And so, so like we're trying to make that all happen because to me, it was like Nani was a dark-skinned, thick Pacific Islander woman, Hawaiian woman specifically, and they casted essentially me. Like, And I was like, I don't want to see myself on screen. I need to see like my mother, my grandmother, like the women from the islands. And for me, it was like, who better to tell about the socioeconomic stuff that Nani goes through? Like, that's what really, I think, hurts me the most is like, even though I didn't grow up in Hawaii, I had a mom who's from a poor country. And so like I hear about her stories and I know what she went through and I know what our people go through in Hawaii. And I'm just like, you can't get someone who's a Nepo baby because if you look at her, like her family, her sister was in a lot of Disney projects. And so I was like, you can't hire a Nepo baby who's literally lying about her heritage to play this woman who goes through so much hardship that a lot of Hawaiians go through. Like, she's not going to be able to go to interviews. Like, my thing is like, this woman's going to be interviewed, right? Like, this girl's going to be interviewed and asked about, how do you relate to Nani? How is she going to relate? She can't.
Jeez.
So that's like been the hardest part, like in terms of when talking about the whole Lilo and Stitch that people don't get, is just that like, there's so many layers to it. So yeah.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think there is a lot of erasure on like specifically that. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like the geographical distance, the fact that it's many different like island nations. But it's like I'm constantly flabbergasted by like the new stuff that I keep learning about either Maori people or just like what has happened in Hawaii, or just it's just like it's stunning that that project needs to be made.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, there's like
why it hasn't been made is I mean, they thought Moana would do it and they were like,
yeah, well, and the thing with Moana is that like you had white writers, you had white production, white designers. Like I remember like you had consultants that were Pacific Islander, but essentially like what I've been told is that they're just there so they can sign the paper and say culture's okay with this. And I'm like, but we're not. Like my mom went to go see that movie and was like, that's not real. Like
really?
Yeah, like she left the movie theater not very happy about it. And I was like very intro into my learning of, because I grew up in Arkansas, there wasn't any Pacific Islanders. Mom, she like had to assimilate, and so she was always like, do as the Romans do. But I feel like as I've gotten older and learned more about my culture, she's able to like she breaks free from the chains of assimilation. And so like I was early on learning about my heritage when I saw Moana, so it spoke to me and I felt it. But as I'm getting older and learning more, I'm like, there were so many things wrong with the way that this was done. It did a lot for the culture in terms of like, I say it's an intro into Polynesia, but it's not Polynesia.
Yeah, I think people forget that like, just because you've done an intro is not everything.
No.
You know? There needs to be like something outside of Disney that seriously discusses what happened in a lot of, I mean, Jesus, like even the minuscule amount on like what has happened to like Aboriginal people in Australia.
Oh my God, yes.
I'm just like, it wasn't until George Floyd and all of that happened. And then people started talking about the police brutality in Australia.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that it was just as bad and pointed towards Aboriginal people. I'm like, anyway, as you can see, I get like very like.
Listen, I'm the same way.
Okay,
I am the same. I was at the bar on Friday night and one of my friends, her mutual friend is a Hispanic woman, and we sit down and we automatically start talking about brown girl like experiences. And I'm like, we're supposed to be out. And I was like, I can never escape. I'm always talking about all this stuff. So I'm the same way.
I think it's good that people talk about this stuff because one, I feel like then people won't then I know like we both know we're not crazy,
Right,
and I think, because the most powerful thing that white supremacy can do is to make is to isolate all of us from each other and think that like we're in this fight alone and that it is futile and we're not powerful enough, when in reality, all of us are recognizing all of the red flags in the room, and we're like, is it? And we're like, okay, we check in. Actually, there's more of us than them. Maybe we can do something.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I also noticed, like kind of tying it back to the show as well, is like, it's the women of every culture. Like literally the women of every culture, that it's almost as if we have this secret code, and like we're always just like, you too, oh, okay, like, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's even in the show, it's that way. It's almost like, oh, we're the same, like we're, you know. And if we could just get the men on board, like if we could just get them on board, things could change even quicker, you know.
I completely agree. Sorry. I think there is, like, if you look even at like the Black Panthers, that was essentially a woman-led movement. Black Lives Matter, woman-led. So there is something, I think, it's so funny. Gender is one of those things that I'm like, I don't know what went left with like this dimension that we're in, where gender is such a, even like to animal like levels, like a very defining thing, where it's very strange. And I would hope that like we as humans could like ascend from it, but we have not. And I don't know how to change it, because that is true. The show shows that it is these women who kind of have the big picture in mind the entire time. And the men seem so focused on just the immediate. And it's the reason why like they almost like come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Yep. And so it's, I think, really revealing to show that, you know, and I don't know what it's going to take, because like the patriarchy is strong. Like it is something that not only affects women, but also affects men. Like they cannot relinquish themselves from like this idea of masculinity being the, you know, priority, the apex, the best thing. Like they are imprisoned in that cycle too. So it takes like a double-sided liberation. And I think the unknown is the thing that's scary, which is why everyone's like, I don't mind. It's not so bad. Like, but it could be better.
Yeah, I see like these matriarchal themed films, you know, and I just know that like back to our roots, like especially for Pacific Islanders, when it was a matriarch, it was just better. Like people are taken care of. It is a community. Like, I don't know, men are allowed to be emotional. Like you're allowed to have your emotions. You're allowed to feel things. And I don't know. I see when I was watching Bridgerton and I was seeing, or Queen Charlotte, and I was seeing it, I was like, even in the show, they're finally showing it's the women that changed the culture. It was the women that like, you know, it was Lady Danbury that was like, this is my son, Lord Danbury. Like, this is who he is. And I think one thing that I started tearing up is when you like knelt down and it was like, you are a descendant of kings and you're a descendant of warriors. Always remember that. And I was just like, again, it is our women from a young age empowering our men. And they just need to grow up and then turn around and be like, foundationally, I was raised and it is my mother and I'm going to advocate for her and for every woman out there as I get older.
I wish that was the logical way of thinking.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you see, there is there was something really moving about that, doing that scene. I love Isaiah, the actor. He was, oh my God. I was like, you were my son now forever.
Yeah.
He was amazing. And it was his first ever thing. And so we were kind of like doing our first ever thing together, like, let's go, buddy. And it was really powerful because his mom was there, and the three of us kind of discussed the scene. And you know, with everything that's like specifically going on with Black men, and just, I mean, Black people in general, and the loss of their innocence at such a young age. Like, you are first Black and then you are a child.
Yeah.
It's so powerful to see like a mother say that to her son, to be that source of reassurance when the world essentially is making him question his value.
Right.
You know, like as though these white people must deem you, you know, Lord Danbury, in order for you to be that, when in reality, like it doesn't, no, we don't actually need them for that. We know.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just, it's formality. Like that's just for them.
Yeah.
But we know. And I think there's, yeah, it's like those were my favorite scenes to do. Those scenes with Princess Augusta. I'm like,
that was some.
It felt so like, you know, to have scenes where you can just, where somebody says something to you, and you know, when you walk away, you're like, oh man, I could have said this, I could have said this, I could have come back around with this. Like, it's so nice to have Shonda write that for you, and you're like, you can say it to her face. And so it's just like one of those, like, there was a lot of therapy that was probably happening for me on this set, and while like acting a lot of this out, that was so, and it was crazy how poignant it is to like this time, how relevant it is, and how much you can take away from that and put it into your own life. It was shocking.
Yeah, like that's why I keep telling people, like when I talk with friends and other people in the fandom, I'm just like, you don't even know, like y'all don't know how much this is going to mean for the culture. Like the conversations people are going to be having, the way that like it's going to open up, like the fandom is so diverse. I've got people like, and I'm sure you know that as well. Like there's so many different people from so many different walks of life. And we're just able to have these conversations simply because the show is actually addressing them and talking about them. And so I'm just like, I wish you guys could understand how groundbreaking, like, sure, we've had other shows that had talked about race and like, you know, the dynamics between, you know, woman's role and all that stuff. But this really brings it to the forefront of like, what if there was a Black queen? And when the other different races are able to hold titles, like what would that have looked like? And it's just like, this is what it should have looked like from the get-go.
That is 100% like how I've been thinking about it, because in seeing people be like, the queen wasn't Black, and I'm like, but what if she was?
Yes.
Like,
what if?
Like, how about that? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? Like, why are we're so fixated, like our lives, like history was not that great. Like nothing is an accurate retelling of anything. Like The Great on Hulu, it's meant to be Russia, and yet they're speaking in English.
Exactly.
Are we getting into a kerfuffle about that? No. But there's something about the visual cue of race, the fact that like we as humans have like put so much, technically like race, the color of our skin is just as important as our height, as the length of our hair. You know, so imagine it's just, there's something I think that people are going to start talking about, and I'm really excited because just having the chat means that it's already working, you know? This is what it's meant to do. It's meant to make people uncomfortable. It's meant to make people confront like their own unconscious biases. You know, it's, I think, what a lot of shows and movies are starting to do now, which is just change. And you start to see people get scared of that change. Yeah, I'm really excited for the show to come out.
Oh, I'm so excited. I just know it's, I don't know. I just have this feeling that it's just gonna bring about so much. It won't be like a rocket of change, but it's going to bring so much like openness, I feel like. I mean, it already did that. Like so many history and like so many historical dramas are already like integrating people of color into their shows without being like, this is the reason we're doing this. It's just happening. Like
It's
PBS
just,
is doing that.
I know. I mean, like there was that the Gilded Age.
Yep.
There's Sanditon in the
Mhm.
UK. There's like a lot of stuff that's starting to come out, which is pretty pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I'm not going to say it's all because of Bridgerton, but I think there is something very interesting when you just create a world that is diverse, that is what we're meant to be aspiring to, and you just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Like, why not show what we should want to look like?
Yeah.
You know, we do that for everything else. Like, I mean, for all of the photo shoots and hair and makeup that we do, I'm like, this is what we really look like.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we do up everything, why not do up the way that the stories that we tell, so that we have a goal that we're reaching for?
Mhm.
I think that is so much more powerful.
Yeah. And people are like, well, Ainsley, it's just a show. It's just a movie. And I'm like, it's not. Like, I'm always just like, you don't understand what movies and stories could do to empower people. Like, I remember watching, I think it was Wonder Woman. I went with one of my best friends and we watched Wonder Woman and we left there and I go, oh, this is what guys feel like when they get to go watch a superhero movie. They leave feeling like, oh, I can do that. You know, like it's something where like you leave somewhere and you're like, I've never had this experience before, but now that I'm able to see it on the screen, I'm like, that's what that feels like. And I'm like, that's what Bridgerton, this is what Queen Charlotte has done, is like, that's what it feels like to feel empowered by something that's like art. And like, that's what I love about it.
I think you totally hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's like the power of representation truly is, you know, when, and I think only people who've been devoid of that get it. It's,
Mhm.
you know, for all of your life, if you've been seeing white, blonde, blue eyes, skinny, tall, you know, um, cutesy, girly, feminine, long hair, and you were like, okay, well, that's obviously not me. I'm not delusional. So then you're like, okay, well, if that's what she gets in her life, and I want what she gets in her life, which is, you know, happiness, then I must be like her.
Yeah.
And you don't realize until you see somebody that looks like you get that happiness that you're like, actually, I can just be me.
Mhm.
And that's okay. And I think you only get that if you've never gotten that before.
Right. No, I completely get that. I think I have a couple more questions and then I'll
Yes,
let you
yeah.
get back to the rest of your day. Um, let's see. Okay. I think one of the biggest twists for me, I kind of touched on it, was the Lord Ledger. Like that whole, like, I'm not gonna lie, out of everything that was like happening in the show, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, okay, cool. Like we're gonna get there. And then I was like, huh, him? Okay, cool.
Yes, yes. That was, I mean, I kind of had a feeling it was probably going to happen. There's a strange relationship that you can kind of tell between Violet and Agatha, or like Lady Danbury in Bridgerton.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I guess it makes sense. And I mean, she deserved it in the end. She needed some,
He needed a good time.
yeah. And yeah, yeah. But yeah, what is your question? Sorry.
Oh, no, no. So like I think it was more or less like, was that kind of like was that kind of like a shock to you in a way too? Like when you read that, like you said you had a feeling that was gonna happen. Like did you when you like go into like, I don't know, for me I was like, I was always hoping Lady Danbury would have like a lover. Like that's like what my when I first heard Queen Charlotte was gonna happen, we had a young Agatha. I was just like, okay, so Lady Danbury's gonna have a love interest. It's gonna be like this hot heated romance. And then I was like, okay, Lord Lecter, sure. Like, yeah. But I mean, I felt the vibes. I felt the vibes between the two. Like the chemistry was so there, but I was still like, man, I was really wanting her and Adolphus to just go on, like be like sneaking in the balls and like having this time together because of how, because you know, Penelope and Colin are next. And so I was like, oh, Agatha can speak to like, you know, falling for your best friend's brother. And so like that's where my mindset was going for it, was like she'll speak to, you know, falling for your best friend's brother, what that dynamic is like, and like empathizing with Penelope, being like, oh, I get it, girl. Like I fell for, you know, most people don't know this, but I fell for the prince and all this stuff. And then I was like, but it's different, but at the same time, it makes sense. It's just like, huh.
I mean, I was surprised. I did not see it coming. I mean, I didn't know if I would get a love interest at all. Mostly because I started out with a husband. So I was like, I don't know how far we're going with this. And then, especially with the time period, like it is more taboo that you just like have sex out of marriage.
Right.
So, like, I mean, God, we saw what happened when like the Duke kissed Daphne and it was like a duel. Jesus. So I was like, oh God, I'm probably not going to get anyone for sure. So the fact that like she gets somebody, and I think there is, you see Adolphus. Okay, I when I read the script, I was like, Adolphus is not nice.
No, and I got that. Like I thought about it a lot, and I was like, it wouldn't work out. Like he's just too traditional.
Yeah, that's what she realizes is like this is, and I think she would notice it immediately. So that's why I think it would have had to have been someone else. And then to like then introduce another character, I think would be like a bit much, because then how do you tie it back into like it just, I think it makes sense. I was surprised. We all hope for someone younger, but you know, I am against ageism.
Yeah,
but
you know, I guess,
but I think there is, it was an interesting choice. I think it'll be interesting to like have discussions with like, what people think, because I did not even think, coming in, that there would be any steaminess for Danbury. I thought she was just going to be like, you know, like firing things up, being in like the politics, having no time for anything. So yeah, I mean, I was thinking, I was like, maybe like with like the Duke's father.
Yes,
I was thinking, or like,
well, see, a lot of people have been shipping Lady Danbury and the Queen, and I was like, well, that would work too. Like somebody like that, or even like Lady Bassett and Lady Danbury was like
that would be, that would have been interesting. Yeah, I was thinking at some point, I was like, maybe like Lady Danbury and Coral.
Oh yeah. I could see
that's
that
like
too.
Been secretly going on this entire time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had that backstory, and then we're like, it's not gonna work for this. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot that can happen, because I think now that she's like finally open, if they make anything continued, it's really gonna like probably kick off for her.
Yeah, we definitely want another spinoff with Lady Danbury being the like. I want to see her work through the politics and like all the maneuvers, because she's got it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it would be I don't know. I like being on like in the shadows and like being like supporting the main story. So I hope like maybe like it's like a Violet Bridgerton, and then I'm like, because they are much closer to you. Yeah, it would be interesting also to like engage in that friendship, because they've just met, and And Connie is an amazing editor, so it'll be fun to also work with her.
And she's so sweet. Like in this show, I'm just like, precious.
And she's like that. She's just the kindest girl ever.
Oh, I love that so much. I think what else? Yeah, to me, I was just like, what? It was just a storyline I was not expecting. But I'm like, as I like, what's that word? Marinate on it a little bit. I'm like, you know what? It works, and I like it. Let's see. I think that's everything. Oh, here's one. Sorry.
No worries.
So like Lady Danbury, like the scene where she cries. I feel like that was such, I don't know, that scene stood out to me the most because we've never seen her break down like that, you know? And I loved it so much because I love it how Princess Augusta was like, do not let them take your tie. Like she was like helping her, but also like, I don't like you. And I like loved it at the same time. I was just like, I don't know. I just love that scene so much. I don't know really I have a question. I just had to say how much I loved how y'all played that dynamic out.
Oh, thank you so much, because that scene, it was originally not that scene. That was, yeah. I think it was like a big change that had happened. I don't remember what it was originally. And I remember being so nervous because I'm like, to just burst out crying and not make it look fake. I'm like, I have to really think about like where she's coming from, because she's coming from like a lot. And I was just like, I'm having a great day. So I was like, God damn it. So, I'm like trying to like mine for like the emotional stuff. And that was like a really lovely scene, because you do also have to empathize with Princess Augusta. Like, I love it when you recognize why like the villains are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something so beautiful about that moment, because like without that like little bit of reassurance, I'm pretty sure like Lady Danbury would have probably like run away. She's like, I give up. I can't do this alone. Like, fuck this noise. And there is something so amazing to see the fact that like also Princess Augusta, who is white, saying this, and like it shows this really beautiful moment, which I think is lost in like the feminism fight, which is like Black women are also in it too. And I think it gets very whitewashed. There is a lot of erasure of like the Black female narrative, and to see her reach across and to like, it just showed that they both are facing very similar issues.
Yeah.
Regardless of race, it's like, there's a bigger thing at hand, and it's a patriarchy.
It's a patriarchy.
And it's like, we're both being negatively affected. It's like, recognize that like we're actually on the same side. Yeah. So I think that was just like a beautiful, like, oh. And then like, yeah, it was a great scene. Because I think without it would have, yeah.
No, y'all did so wonderful with it. And to me, it was again, these women, fighting the patriarchy. And then it also brought back to the point that like Lady Danbury's not just holding on to her title. She's literally got the weight of the entire half of the ton on her back. And I think that's why I loved her character even more. And I think even though this is about George and Charlotte, I'm like, y'all need to recognize what Lady Danbury like went through and did for the ton. Sure, Queen Charlotte like signed it off and everything and was there to support, but like Lady Danbury was literally talking to solicitors, talking to Princess Augusta, had the entire ton like in her living room being like, what are you going to do? And I was like, she's just a woman. And I'm like, but at the same time, she's just a woman, and that is so powerful.
No, it's true. And I think it like brings in like the fact that Lady D is also like darker skinned than Charlotte.
Yes.
There is like this thing that she recognizes, like, I'm going to do like the background work, and she's got to be the face. And that's how we're going to be able to work together, because I can't be the face. it's not going to work with me. And so I think they beautifully balance each other out. And I think that's the reason why she kind of like slaps her together. She's like, girl, listen, you got to get it together. We got bigger things to do.
Yeah.
And it's time. And so I think there is this real, like, it's just about showing like all of the complexities and the nuances and textures of just how it's not easy to create like diversity the way it does in Bridgerton. And I think people think, oh, you just, you throw Black people in there and you throw brown people in there and you throw Asian people in there and it's all good. And it's actually, no, it has to be so much more careful than that. Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for talking with me. I'm just like, I just absolutely love everything that you do. And I hope that this journey is just a fantastic one for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ainsley. And like your support has been like this beautiful beacon. So you are truly amazing. Like it's very rare that like I like, this is a really great connection. And so, keep doing you. You're doing it.
Well, thank you. And so what?
And you're doing it well.
Oh, thank you. Well, so are you. Like, I hope that we can talk more sometime later and maybe just chat to catch up when you're free. And if there's any other projects that you have or anything that you would like to like talk about or promote, please let me know. And I'd be more than happy to like share and like tell people about it, to be like, y'all need to support as well. So like, just let me know. I'm more than happy to do that.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, truly.
Thank you.